The world saw Ötzi as a pale, long-haired European frozen 5,300 years ago. DNA proved it, until it didn't. The trusted genome that shaped his story was contaminated, hiding the truth about his ancestry and even his appearance. The latest breakthrough reveals a real-life twist no one expected. If you think you already know Ötzi, you're about to find out you don't. On September 19, 1991, two German hikers, Erika and Helmut Simon, were making their way across the melting edge of a glacier high in the Ötztal Alps. They spotted what looked like a stick poking out of the ice, but as they got closer, they realized it was something far stranger, a human arm, perfectly preserved, reaching out from the ancient snow. Rescue teams arrived by helicopter, expecting to recover the body of a lost mountaineer. Instead, they uncovered a man frozen for over 5,000 years. The discovery was so unexpected that border authorities from both Austria and Italy argued for days over who would claim the find. GPS measurements finally settled it. The body belonged to Italy. Ötzi, as he came to be known, was Europe's oldest natural mummy. His skin, tools, and even the food in his stomach had survived more than 50 centuries in the ice. He stood about 1.6 meters tall, weighed just under 50 kilograms, and was around 45 years old at the time of his death. His body bore the marks of a violent end, an arrow wound in his left shoulder, a deep cut on his right hand, and bruises that told a story of conflict in his final days. Yet it was the secrets locked in his bones that would rewrite what scientists thought they knew about the ancient past. In 2012, a team of researchers at URAC Research and the Max Planck Institute achieved something never done before. They sequenced the entire genome of a prehistoric mummy using a sample drawn from Ötzi's hip bone. The results were celebrated as a breakthrough. For the first time, scientists could look directly at the DNA of someone who lived before the pyramids were built. The data painted a picture of a man with brown eyes, type O blood, and a genetic risk for heart disease, traits that made him feel surprisingly modern. But the real headline was his ancestry. According to the 2012 genome, Ötzi carried genes from the Eastern European steppes, the same region that would later send waves of horse-riding herders into Europe. This was puzzling. Archaeologists knew that the steppe people didn't arrive in Central Europe until about 4,900 years ago, 4 centuries after Ötzi's death. Yet the DNA seemed certain. For more than a decade, textbooks and museum displays repeated this story. Ötzi was a blend of Anatolian farmers and Eastern steppe herders, a genetic bridge between worlds. The science seemed settled, but a quiet doubt lingered beneath the surface. The story behind Ötzi's ancestry took a sharp turn as the science caught up with its own mistakes. The 2012 genome results had gripped the world with the idea that a man frozen in the Alps for 5,300 years carried the genes of distant steppe herders. Those herders, from what's now Russia and Ukraine, didn't set foot in Central Europe until at least 4 centuries after Ötzi died. The numbers just didn't add up. Archaeologists and geneticists quietly questioned how a man so ancient could show markers from a migration that hadn't happened yet. The timeline was off, but the data seemed to insist otherwise. Behind the scenes, the doubts grew. Scientists began to wonder if something had gone wrong in the lab. Ancient DNA is fragile, easily overwhelmed by modern traces. The first extraction from Ötzi's hip bone had been performed before today's strict cleanroom standards. Back then, even a stray skin cell from a researcher or a single droplet from a lab tool could slip into the sample. At the time, there were only a few dozen ancient genomes to compare against, so modern DNA could easily masquerade as something ancient and rare. As more ancient DNA studies rolled in from across Europe, the outlier status of Ötzi's supposed steppe ancestry became impossible to ignore. Newer methods for detecting contamination flagged inconsistencies in the original data. The genetic signature that looked like steppe ancestry in 2012 was actually a mirage, an artifact of modern DNA mixing into the ancient sample. The evidence was hiding in plain sight, masked by the limits of early sequencing technology and a lack of reference genomes. For 11 years, museum displays and textbooks taught a version of Ötzi's story that couldn't have happened. The scientific community now faced a hard truth. The most celebrated ancient genome in Europe was built on a contaminated foundation. The search for the real Ötzi had to start over, this time with technology that could separate ancient truth from modern error. August 16th, 2023 brought a breakthrough that rewrote the history books. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute and URAC Research returned to Ötzi's hip bone, this time with technology that could spot even the faintest trace of modern contamination. Their methods were exacting. Every tool was sterilized, every surface scrubbed, every step designed to keep the ancient DNA pure. The result was the cleanest sample ever taken from the Iceman. When the new genome sequence came back, the old story vanished overnight. The data showed 0% steppe ancestry, not a trace. The genetic signature that once seemed to connect Ötzi to the horse-riding herders of the Russian and Ukrainian plains was gone. In its place stood a clear picture. About 90% of his DNA matched early farmers from Anatolia, what is now Turkey. Other people living in Europe at the same time had already mixed with local hunter-gatherers or later arrivals. Ötzi had not. His ancestors were part of a wave of farming families who crossed into Europe more than 8,000 years ago. Their descendants settled in the Alps and stayed put, generation after generation, rarely mixing with outsiders. The 2023 study didn't just correct a mistake. It revealed a man whose genetic roots ran deep into the first great farming societies of the Old World. Ötzi's DNA acts like a time capsule, preserving the story of a migration that shaped the continent but left only faint traces in most modern Europeans. For the first time, science could see the real lineage behind the Iceman, one that had survived, untouched, in the shadow of the Alps for thousands of years. The old reconstructions, based on contaminated data, no longer matched the evidence. A new portrait was about to take shape. The new portrait of Ötzi is nothing like the familiar museum figure. Instead of pale skin, his DNA points to a much darker complexion, darker than most people living in Sicily today. The high melanin genes in his genome reveal that the mummy's brown skin isn't just the result of thousands of years trapped in ice. It's a window into a time before light skin became common in Europe. Even the idea of a wild-haired mountain man falls apart under the microscope. At 45, Ötzi carried the genes for male pattern baldness. The long, dark hair found near his body may never have been attached to his scalp. The real man was probably balding or nearly bald when he died, but the surprises don't stop with his looks. In 2025, researchers sequenced the genomes of 47 people who lived in the same alpine valleys as Ötzi during the same era. Their ancestry matched his, almost 90% descended from Anatolian farmers. Yet when scientists checked the Y chromosome, which traces paternal lines, they found something strange. Most of Ötzi's neighbors belonged to a group of men whose roots stretched back to what is now France and Germany. Ötzi's paternal lineage was different. His Y chromosome, labeled GL91, was absent from the rest of the group. Even among his own people, he stood apart, a genetic outsider in a community that had otherwise stayed together for generations. The forensic evidence only deepens the mystery. An arrow struck him from behind, fired from about 30 meters away, slicing through his shoulder and severing a major artery. He bled to death within half an hour. A defensive wound on his right hand, still healing, hints at a knife fight days before. Yet his prized copper axe and dagger were left untouched. This wasn't a robbery. Someone wanted him dead, and after 5,000 years, the killer's motive is still lost to time. Science just rewrote Ötzi's story, and changed how we see the ancient world. As DNA technology advances, every old certainty is up for challenge. Even a 5,300-year-old face can surprise us. The past isn't fixed. It's waiting to be corrected. Let me know what you think below.